William.
Hello.
Hi, it's Mark Pope here. Sorry to trouble you. You wouldn't be able to do us a small favour. You couldn't just, if you had a minute, you can just amend my description to put my council.
Sure.
I forgot to do that. I'm so sorry.
Sure, I'll do that, Councillor Pope, no problem.
Could you add chair of A and G on it too? Would you mind? That's very kind of you. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay, later at 7 o'clock and we're streaming on YouTube. Thank you.
Thank you and good evening everyone to an executive meeting of East Herts District Council. I'd like to welcome you all, whether you're in this meeting or watching us on YouTube. And I'd like to welcome officers and members across the board. Agenda item 1 is apologies. As far as I can see, we have no apologies from the executive, so we're all here. Agenda item 2 is leaders' announcements. Again, I'd just like to thank the staff for everything that you've been doing. We're now 6-7 months into COVID and not being able to do a lot of things with our families that we would like, and having to work sometimes under very difficult circumstances. So I just want all of you to accept the whole executive's thanks and other councillors, because you have just carried on regardless. The council is working, it's operating, and most of the time I don't think our residents realise that just how you've had to put together very quickly a lot of working practices. I know a lot of you missing your colleagues, and I know that sometimes Teams meetings or team meetings or Zoom meetings just aren't the same, where you want to actually catch up on a social way, but also because you all care for each other. And I think that's a very important aspect of the East Herts District Council councillors, but also their staff. So thank you very much indeed. Just a reminder, as always, we are being live YouTubed, I can't see all of you on my screen. So if any of you wish to ask a question or make a comment, you are more than welcome, but please use your blue hand. Rebecca and I will do our best to keep track of who's going and who's asking, but that's the way to do it. And also please stay on mute unless you are unless you are talking. So thank you. We now move to agenda item 3, which are the minutes of the previous meeting. Excuse me. These are on page 7 to 16. Please can I ask that you approve them as a correct record of the minutes held on the 1st of September. Are there any comments or questions? If not, please can I have a proposer? I can propose, and a seconder. George, is that you putting your hand up? That would be
Yes,
great.
it is, Chairman. Thank you. I'm very happy to propose. Sorry, to second. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed. Right, we now go into agenda item 4, which is declarations of interest. It's not just the executive who need to declare interest, it's any councillor who is sitting in this meeting. Are there any declarations of interest? No. In that case, we go to agenda item 5, which is an update from Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Councillor Wiley, is there anything you wish to comment on, please?
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening. We had a meeting on the 15th of September where we discussed the Task and Finish Group report on social housing, which I believe your committee, or sorry, your executive are looking at enhancing with further work. We had discussed the council tax reduction scheme, which I believe you're discussing this evening, and the policy for enforcing standards of private landlords. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wiley. Are there any comments or questions for him on as Chairman of Overview and Scrutiny? In that case, agenda item 6 is the update from the Audit and Governance Committee. Councillor Pope, is there anything you wish to contribute?
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Audit and Governance met on the 22nd of September. The committee welcomed Stephen Linnett, the Council's new Head of Strategic Finance and Property, to his first committee meeting, and thanked Bob Palmer, the previous interim head, for his hard work during his time in the role. The committee received an update on the progress of the 2019-20 audit from Ernst & Young, the external auditor, and was pleased to note that there were no significant issues to report. The Council's amended annual governance statement was reviewed and agreed, and the committee also reviewed the Council's draft accounts for 2019-20, and these were also agreed. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Bob and his team for their hard work in the production of these accounts. They're a large document, and there was a significant amount of work involved in producing them. Lastly, the committee reviewed the Q1 budget monitoring report. This will be considered by this committee later on in the meeting, and there were no issues to report from that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pope. Are there any comments or questions for Councillor Pope as Chair of Audit and Governance? No, in that case, if we move on, please, to agenda item 7, which is on page 17. This is a report on amendments to policies of the district plan map. Now, I'm presenting this paper because obviously the district plan came under my responsibility when it was being first put together. Much Haddam Council has found a couple of errors in the maps as they were originally produced. The paper itself has been reproduced and will appear before Council with those errors rectified. Planning policy recognised those errors, and but because it is a district plan policy, it needs to go through executive and then will come to Council. So just to highlight it so that we're very clear as to what's going on, on paragraph 2.5, the name of the burial ground should be corrected from St Thomas Burial Ground to Perry Green Burial Ground, and also any reference throughout the paper to CLFR1 needs to be corrected to CFLR1. So I'm happy to propose this paper. Please, can I have a seconder? There is one recommendation, which is that the amendments are noted. And there, Councillor Buckmaster has seconded. Thank you very much indeed. If we can go now to agenda item 8, which is on page 27.
Sorry, Councillor Hazy, could I just interrupt? I got the proposer and the seconder.
Oh, we haven't got, sorry, we haven't voted. Yes, my apologies. Right, please can I ask the executive to put their hands up to take this paper through if they're in agreement. Great. Sorry, Rebecca. One day I'll get it right, but thank you for the reminder. Okay, so item 8 is the Harlow and Gilston Sustainability Guidance Checklist and Draft for Consultation. Now, this is a piece of work that has been, which very clearly lays out of what we expect our developers in the Harlow Gilston Garden Town. And this is now going to go out for consultation, but also marries up with the sustainability SPD, which East Herts is also producing. This, though, is very much a checklist which guides developers through what is expected and what we will expect them to do, so that we do ensure that we build high quality communities across the whole of the garden town, not just within Gilston. I'm very happy to take, and all councillors have been given the opportunity of attending a training session on this in the last few weeks. I'm very happy to take any comments or questions on this. No, there is one recommendation that this draft goes out for a 6-week period for public consultation between October and December. Happy to propose. May I have a seconder, please? Councillor Buckmaster seconds. All in favour? Right, I see all hands up from the executive. Thank you very much indeed. If we now go to agenda item 9, which is on page 63, this is policies for enforcing standards for private sector landlords. Councillor Boylan, will you introduce this paper, please?
Yes, thank you, Leader. Good evening, everybody. By way of introduction, I would just say the Housing and Planning Act 2016 introduced measures to help councils to tackle poor quality private landlords and to drive up standards in the private housing sector. It may come as a surprise to many of us that the private rented housing market makes up for almost half of all rented accommodation in East Herts, and can be found in every town and village across the district. Tonight, I'm asking the executive to support the recommendation to council to adopt this series of 4 policies, which will help us to drive up the standards of the private rented housing market across the district. These 4 policies are being developed with other authorities across Hertfordshire and Bedfordshire to ensure the approach and civil penalties are applied in a consistent manner. The policies have been subject to public consultation and were presented to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the 15th of September, following which some helpful amendments have been made to the policies before being presented to you tonight. Finally, I would like to thank officers for their energy and commitment to the development of these policies, in particular Jane O'Brien. I would therefore propose that the executive support this recommendation to council for the adoption of these policies. I'm happy to take any questions, and I know that there are several officers here tonight that can also ably help with any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Boylan. Again, if you have any questions on this, please can you put your blue hand up?
Leader, I can see that Councillor Eric Buckmaster has his hand raised.
Councillor Buckmaster.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I guess we all hope that we won't have to implement some of these policies because everybody's behaving as they ought to. There are some quite strong powers in there, but I think I take heart from the fact that the comment in the papers that they support transparency, and in terms of evidence level, it needs to be a criminal standard.
Yes.
So I think they will be used appropriately. And as I said at the beginning, I hope we don't very often have to do that, but I think it's very worthwhile to bring this paper through. Thank you, Leader.
Anybody else, Rebecca? Because I can't see blue hands on this screen. No.
I can't see any further blue hands that have gone up, Councillor Hazy.
Okay, thank you very much. There is one recommendation, which is that the proposed new policies relating to housing standards enforcement and the adoption of the powers introduced in the Housing and Planning Act 2016 be recommended to Council for adoption. Peter, you've proposed. May I have a seconder, please? Thank you. All in favour? Great. Okay. Thank you very much. No, good piece of work. And I know there are a number of officers on this call who have been involved with this. If you care to leave, that's fine. If you care to sit out with us, that's even more fine. So please, but thank you all for your work. All right. If we now go to agenda item 10, which is on page 99, this is the Council Tax Reduction Scheme 2021-22.
Thank you, Leader. This report contains our annual review of our Council Tax Reduction Scheme, which was introduced in 2013 in replacement of council tax benefit. Since its introduction, our scheme has required all working age claimants to pay a minimum 8.5% of their council tax liability, and we have maintained this level in subsequent reviews. It should be remembered that any change to the scheme would come with its risks. If we were to increase the discount from its present level, that would be at a cost to this council and the other precepting authorities. To reduce it would potentially increase hardship and would make collection more difficult. Furthermore, any change would require a public consultation. Therefore, for these reasons, I put it to the executive that we should continue with the current scheme for the next year. And on that basis, I am pleased to move the recommendation A on page 99. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments or questions on this for Jeff? Anything, Rebecca?
No, Leader, I can see no hands raised.
Okay, no, I mean, it's steady as it goes. So it looks as though we are clear. So Jeff, you've proposed. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Rutland Barsby, all in favour? Thank you, Sue. Thank you for all your work and a short meeting for you, at least. Thank you. Bye-bye. Right, now it's agenda item 11, which is on page 117. Again, Councillor Williamson, please.
Thank you, Leader. Maybe at this point I could introduce and welcome Stephen Lynette, who's joined us as our new Head of Strategic Finance and Property, this being his first executive meeting. This is the first monitoring report for the current financial year, covering the period April to June. As we will all appreciate, this has been a period of considerable financial uncertainty for the Council, being the early part of the COVID lockdown, with many of our core funding streams being affected badly. Earlier indications suggested that the Council would have to use significant amounts of its financial reserves to cover these losses. However, the various forms of government grant support announced over the summer have meant that the overall impact is now much less than previously envisaged. And as will be seen from the report, we now predict an outturn for the year with an overspend of just 100,000. In relation to our capital projects, as will be seen from Appendix A, we are very much on target for our budgeted capital spend this year as our projects progress, and only a small amount is expected to be taken forward into next year. There are two recommendations, A and B, on page 117, which I'm pleased to move. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Rebecca, can you see any hands or anyone who wishes to ask a question or make a comment?
Yes, Councillor Redfern.
Okay, Councillor Redfern, please.
Sorry about that. I hadn't got myself on the screen, so I couldn't unmute. I just wanted, this is a sort of slightly off the point of this, but I really felt that it was important that I asked this question this evening. At the last executive meeting, it was resolved to review the capital programme and update business cases for major projects as part of the 2020-21 budget setting. I believe it is important that these updated business cases be brought to full council to decide whether they are viable, robust to future changes, and will indeed provide the promised returns rather than becoming millstones round council taxpayers' necks due to the necessary debt repayments and estimated incomes failing to materialise. Will the executive agree that the revised business plans should be brought to full council as soon as possible, please? Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Williamson, can you answer that one, please, for Councillor Redfern?
By all means, yes, thank you. Well, the work on the business cases to test against various scenarios, Brexit, COVID, potential delays and so on, is now substantially complete. And they do confirm that the projects are still financially viable. Although the predicted revenue returns from the leisure centres and Hertford Theatre are reduced potentially by varying degrees depending on the scenario, they still represent a positive financial position for the council, comparing favourably with the current subsidies that we've been paying up to now. Therefore, to proceed represents far better value for council taxpayers than any do-nothing alternative. The capital programme is part of the budget setting that will not be put in front of council until early next year, but I can confirm that the business case reviews will be presented to council at the earliest opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions for Councillor Williamson over this quarterly review? Monitor.
Councillor Goldspink has raised her hand.
Councillor Goldspink. You're on mute,
yes,
Councillor.
Yes. Oh, can you hear me now? Yes, sorry. Yes, thank you. I'm very glad to hear that the business cases are being reviewed. Can you give us any definite date when we might see the review of these business cases? You say they're substantially complete. Are you able to give us a date when we might see them?
Yes, I believe we're only sort of days away, Councillor Goldspink, and as soon as they're available, we'll get them circulated.
Oh, thank you.
Anyone else, Rebecca?
No, Leader, not that I can see.
Okay, that's great. If we are missing you, then please just unmute yourself and shout. In that case, colleagues, can I take you please to the two recommendations, A and B, on page 117. They've already been moved by Councillor Williamson. Please may I have a seconder? Councillor Goodeve, all in favour? Right, thank you very much indeed. Right, we're now moving to agenda item 12, which is on page 135, which is the use of compulsory purchase powers in the Gilston area. Now, please remember that part of this paper is in part 2s. If there is anything you wish to ask on that particular aspect of the paper, we will need to go into part 2. So I can introduce the paper, but please remember that we need to be careful on what we ask. And I know Rebecca and James will immediately move us if we need to go. So this report relates to the issue of the potential use of CPO powers to support development in the Gilston area. As you know, the East Herts District Plan, adopted in 2018, allocates land for the development of 10,000 new homes in the Gilston area, along with the provision of the associated and necessary infrastructure. The development will form a significant part of that which will comprise the Harlow-Gilston Garden Town. Core elements of the infrastructure relate to transport provision. To support the Gilston area development coming forward in full and to enable the sustainable transport objectives that this council and the Garden Town partners have signed up to be achieved, we have identified the need for two key elements of new and enhanced transport infrastructure. These are the widening of the existing A414 River Stort crossing between the Gilston area and Harlow to provide additional capacity which will be available for sustainable transport modes only. The creation of a new road crossing to the River Stort between the Gilston area and Harlow to provide additional capacity for all transport modes. Members will be aware that planning applications have been submitting relating to the developments I have referred to. These applications will be considered by Development Management Committee in due course. Any decision to make now as the executive will not fetter the considerations of that committee in due course in relation to those planning applications. What we do know is that the landowners who have submitted the planning applications for the homes in the Gilston area and supporting transport infrastructure do not own or have control of all the land which is required to enable the transport infrastructure to be constructed if planning permission be granted. The reasons why it is necessary and appropriate for the development to take place were set out and tested when the council prepared and adopted the district plan. The related reasons why it may become necessary for the council to use its CPO powers are set out in this report. For the development to take place in an acceptable way, if planning permission is granted, ensuring any harm is appropriately mitigated, it is necessary for the transport infrastructure to be developed and provided for use. This report therefore seeks a resolution by the executive to recommend to council that this council agrees in principle to the use of CPO powers under the Town and Country Planning Act to secure the land that is required to ensure the provision of the transport infrastructure. I say in principle, as the applicant for the majority of the new homes within the Gilston area, Places for People, will continue to seek to acquire the necessary land by negotiation. Only an in-principle decision from this executive and the council is required at this stage, as if those negotiations are successful, the need to exercise CPO powers will fall away. If these negotiations are unsuccessful, and it remain necessary for the council to commence the use of CPO powers available to it, then a further report will come to the executive and council setting out the requirement to proceed from an in-principle agreement to use of powers for their actual implementation. At this stage, then, I ask the executive members to agree to recommend to council that this council resolves in principle to the use of CPO powers as set out in the report. I move the recommendations, which are on page 135 going on to 136, A, B, and C, and I am very happy to take any questions. We also have Kevin Steptoe here, who's the lead planner for East Herts, who is putting these reports together. Are there any questions or comments on this, Rebecca?
No questions seem to be indicated, Leader.
Okay, no, that's great. So I proposed it. Please may I have a seconder? Councillor Williamson, thank you. Please can I ask the executive to approve A, B and C en bloc? Okay, great, thank you. Now, agenda item 13, I do need to take this meeting into part 2, which is, I have to ask the executive to agree that we go into part 2s, and we will then exclude all the press and public, and that statement is on page of the second page of the agenda. So executive, I propose it. Please may I have a seconder for us to go into part 2s? Councillor Boylan, all in agreement? Okay, right. William, can you please check that we are no longer YouTubing?
Yes, just bear with me one moment, Leader. I'll stop the stream.